My name is Thea Anders and I'm 29 years old. 3 years ago, my mother looked straight at me, slid a pen across the table, and told me I had always been the family's biggest disappointment, then asked me to sign away my inheritance in front of a dozen relatives. That afternoon, I walked out of my parents' house with nothing. No money, no support, and no safety net of any kind. Everything went to my sister Victoria, including the $4 million estate, the beach house, and every investment account, while my father couldn't even bring himself to meet my eyes as I left. What none of them knew at the time, not my parents, not my carefully polished sister, was that a single phone call between two lawyers years later would uncover a truth that changed everything. When my father finally heard the number attached to that truth, he repeated the same two words again and again, like someone struggling to stay upright after the ground shifted beneath him. But before that moment, let me take you back to the Sunday in March when my family decided to erase me. The call came the Wednesday before while I was sitting on the floor of my small studio apartment in New Haven, surrounded by fabric samples and floor plans for my first solo interior design project, an $800 job I was genuinely proud of. My mother's name flashed on my phone, followed by a short message ordering me to attend a family meeting that Sunday. No explanation and no warmth. Something about her tone felt off, sharper and too prepared, yet I went anyway because I always did. I drove 3 hours through steady rain to Fairfield County, watching the familiar stone house on Ridgewood Lane rise out of the gray like a warning rather than a welcome. Inside, 12 relatives were already seated around the dining table, dressed as if for an official event, with my grandmother by the window, my uncle and aunt avoiding my gaze, and my parents' estate lawyer at the head of the table with a thick folder open. My father stood stiffly behind his chair, my mother pointed me toward the only empty seat at the far end, and beside my father sat Victoria, calm and composed, already aware of what was about to happen. A single document waited at my place with my name printed at the top, and before I could read further, my father told me to sit down, assuring me it wouldn't take long as the lawyer began reading in a flat voice that stripped the moment of any remaining warmth. The lawyer calmly announced that the entire estate was being transferred to Victoria and Anders, including the Ridgewood Lane house, the beach place in Mystic, all investment accounts, and the trust my grandfather created, totaling roughly $4 million, every asset listed under her name and none under mine. I looked at my father and quietly asked what that meant for me, but he didn't answer, instead fixing his cuff and staring past me as if I wasn't there. My mother stepped in without hesitation and said in a flat and practiced tone that I had always been their greatest disappointment and that they were done pretending otherwise. No one in the room reacted. My grandmother studied her hands, my uncle shifted uncomfortably, my cousins avoided my eyes, and Victoria remained perfectly still, though I noticed the faintest hint of satisfaction on her face. The attorney slid a prepared document toward me, already marked with tabs, explaining that my signature was needed to finalize the decision, and my mother lifted her chin as if daring me to protest. I picked up the pen, surprised by how steady my hand felt, acknowledged that I understood, signed my name and stood up before the ink had even dried. No one stopped me or asked if I was okay as I walked down the hallway toward the front door, past a wall filled only with framed photos celebrating Victoria's achievements, none of me in sight. Outside, the rain continued, and before I reached my car, a message from Victoria appeared saying it was nothing personal, just business, which I deleted without replying. The drive back to New Haven took hours, and partway through I pulled over, sat in silence as cars rushed by, and let the reality settle in without tears or anger. When I finally got home, everything was exactly as I'd left it: design samples on the floor, plans on the wall, a simple breakfast dish still in the sink. And when I checked my account balance, I saw I had $3,200 and no one to fall back on. That night, sitting on the kitchen floor, I made a list of what I still had instead of what I lost, and while it was short, it belonged entirely to me. The following week my first client canceled without explanation, and a few days later another followed, hitting harder than the first, marking the quiet beginning of how much rebuilding still lay ahead. The job I lost was a full kitchen renovation, weeks of planning already completed, measurements taken, materials discussed, and instead of an email, the homeowner called, speaking carefully as she explained they had heard I was dealing with personal problems and felt it was safer to work with someone they believed was more reliable right now. I asked where that information came from, and after a pause she said she preferred not to say, which made something heavy settle in my stomach. 2 projects gone in 1 week. both using the same careful wording, both pulling away for reasons unrelated to my work, and that's when I knew this wasn't random. I shifted to smaller jobs just to stay afloat. A simple living room update for a rental, a color consultation that paid barely enough to cover groceries, and I ate cereal for dinner several nights in a row because it was cheap and predictable. Hitting bottom didn't feel dramatic at all. It felt quiet and practical, like dividing one box of pasta into multiple meals and calling it a plan. In the third week, I reached out to the only family member I thought might still listen, my uncle, who spoke kindly but made it clear he didn't want to be involved. And when the call ended, I understood there was no middle ground anymore, only them and me. That same evening, an email arrived from someone I didn't recognize asking about a high-end design consultation in Hartford, and I nearly deleted it because it felt unreal, but I didn't. The truth found me a few weeks later in a small coffee shop when a former client sat down across from me and asked, with clear discomfort, if I was still working, then admitted my sister had told people at a dinner gathering that I'd stepped away from the business and had been removed from the family for serious reasons she wouldn't explain. She didn't give details, and that was the point, because silence invites assumptions, and suddenly everything made sense: the cancellations, the quiet distance, the closed doors. My sister hadn't just taken what was handed to her, she was quietly making sure there was nothing left behind me, spreading doubt without leaving proof. I felt angry but clearer than I had in months, and instead of confronting anyone, I decided to move forward somewhere she couldn't touch. 3 months later, I broke my own rule and called my mother, not to ask for help or sympathy, but because I needed one honest answer, and when she picked up, I knew whatever came next would finally tell me where I stood. She said my name without warmth or curiosity, not a question or a greeting, just a reminder that I still existed, and I asked her directly if the meeting had been planned, the lawyers, the relatives, all of it, and after a long pause she said they had done what they believed was best for the family, which told me everything. I asked whether it was really for the family or simply easier because my sister never caused trouble. And when I said I had never given them a reason to worry either, the silence stretched again, filled only by her breathing and the familiar drip of the kitchen faucet she and my father had ignored for years. Then she softened her voice the way adults do when correcting a child and told me that if I had followed their expectations, chosen the path they approved of, none of this would have happened, and in that moment I understood the rule I had broken. Love in her world was conditional, and I no longer qualified. I told her calmly that this would be the last time I called, not as a threat but as a fact, and when I hung up I kept my promise, letting the silence settle in day by day until it stopped feeling heavy and started feeling honest. Months later, my sister sent carefully written emails full of concern and distance, messages designed to protect her image rather than repair anything, and instead of replying I quietly saved them, trusting the instinct that told me documentation mattered. Then everything shifted when I met the woman behind that early inquiry. A sharp, self-made property owner who walked me through a half-finished penthouse and watched how I saw possibility where others saw damage. And for the first time in months I didn't feel like I was defending myself or explaining my choices. I was simply doing what I was good at, and that was enough to change the direction of my life. The call begins with my name, not as a greeting or a question, just a reminder that I still exist, and I ask my mother directly if the meeting, the people involved, and everything that followed had been planned, only to be met with silence that feels deliberate rather than accidental. She eventually says they did what was best, and when I ask whether that was truly for the family or just for Victoria, the answer avoids responsibility, repeating that Victoria never caused concern, even though neither had I. The pause grows longer, and I notice small sounds in the background, like her breathing and a dripping faucet, details that stick with you when honesty is being delayed. When she finally speaks again, her tone is gentle in a way that feels instructive, explaining that if I had followed the path they wanted, none of this would have happened, making it clear that obedience, not understanding, was the condition for belonging. I tell her calmly that this will be the last time I call, and despite her dismissing it as drama, I end the call and keep my promise, allowing weeks and months of silence to pass without reaching out. Over time, the anger fades, replaced by a quiet that feels heavy but steady and strangely freeing. Months later, Victoria emails me with carefully written messages expressing concern while distancing herself from responsibility, followed by an offer of help that feels more controlling than supportive, prompting me to quietly save her emails instead of responding, trusting my instinct to keep records. Around this time, a message from Margaret Calloway leads to a meeting at a damaged penthouse where I focus on the space instead of selling myself. which earns her trust and results in a major project that pushes me beyond anything I've handled before. The success of that work leads to more clients, real opportunities, and eventually an offer to collaborate on a larger venture, one based on respect and clear agreements rather than pity. Months later, I relocate to North Carolina, start a company under a new name that leaves my past behind, and commit fully to building something stable and honest, working long hours without looking back. Just as my old life begins to feel distant, a message from a college friend reconnects me to the past, and during a simple coffee meeting when I finally explain everything that happened, his reaction makes it clear that my story may not be as closed as I believed. Yes, she works in Fairfield County at a Stamford firm. That's her. But Daniel is quiet for a moment, thinking it through. Her name appeared in an email chain he was reviewing from a commercial real estate deal in the Southeast. That didn't make sense. Victoria doesn't do commercial deals. Then he leans forward. Thea, in those emails your sister was warning them about you. She described you as unreliable, claimed your family had cut ties with you over serious financial problems, and even used your full name. She told them not to work with anyone connected to Thea Anders. The coffee in my cup tastes bitter. I stay silent as the cafe hums around me, the espresso machine, laughter from a nearby table, music bleeding from cheap speakers. Daniel studies me carefully. Don't act yet, he says. Let me confirm everything. But Thea, if this is what I think it is, your sister wasn't just favored. She was actively working against you. I nod, hands flat on the table, steady though inside something is shifting. I need to pause here because this is the moment where everything splits. If you were me, discovering your own sister secretly sabotaging your name, making sure you couldn't rebuild, what would you do? Confront her or keep building quietly? Comment below. A for confront, B for silence. And if this story hits home, the subscribe button is right there. It's free and it helps more than you know. Now what happened next caught me completely off guard. 18 months after leaving Connecticut, Alder Interiors completes its 12th project. I keep a detailed log in the leather notebook Margaret gave me, tracking every project, every number. 12 renovations, $1.2 million in annual revenue. Still feels unreal writing it down. Then Margaret and I take on our first major acquisition. A neglected 3-story commercial building in South Asheville, condemned by the city 2 years earlier. Everyone says it's a waste, a money pit. We see potential. I redesign the interiors, Margaret handles permits and zoning. We pour 6 months and every dollar we have into it. By the end, the building houses 4 luxury retail tenants and 2 design studios. Net profit, $340,000. My name starts appearing in regional design magazines, a feature in Asheville Home and Design, a mention in a Charlotte real estate newsletter. Small recognitions, but for someone told she'd never amount to anything, they mean the world. I hire a small team, project manager, assistant designer, bookkeeper, to help manage the work and keep me accountable. We operate out of a converted warehouse that smells of sawdust and fresh paint. I still drive my old Honda Civic, live in my 1-bedroom above the pottery studio, and eat lunch at my desk. Life is growing, but I keep it intentionally small. Then one evening, over Thai food in Margaret's kitchen, she says something that makes me freeze mid-bite, stopping my chopsticks in the air. That there's a parcel of land in Westport, Connecticut, just listed, right next to some of the residential estates in my parents' neighborhood. He watches my reaction. I know what she means. Westport borders where I grew up. I don't flinch. Send me the listing. 3 years after signing those papers, I walk into the Connecticut Real Estate Association's annual charity gala at the Hartford Marriott. I almost didn't come. 200 guests, black tie, every major name in Connecticut real estate. My first instinct was to say no. I'm not ready to face anyone who might have heard Victoria's version of my story, but Margaret doesn't let me hide. You belong here, she tells me. So I'm here. Black dress, simple, no jewelry, hair straight and neat. I look calm, confident. For the first time it's real. The ballroom glows under gold lighting, champagne floats on silver trays. A string quartet plays softly, and 200 people in gowns and suits move through the space. I spot them before they see me. My father stands near the bar, talking to Mr. Whitfield, the same attorney from 3 years ago. My mother sits with Aunt Janet and Victoria. Across the room, Victoria is laughing with a group of men in expensive suits. My chest tightens. 3 years of silence and my body still reacts. Margaret lays a hand on my arm. Breathe. I do. Then Patricia looks up. Our eyes meet across the polished floor. Her champagne glass pauses midair. Victoria notices, follows her gaze, finds me for a second. Silence. Margaret steps forward and I follow. She greets Mr. Whitfield as an old colleague might, then gestures to me. Have you met my business partner, Thea Anders, the creative force behind Alder Interiors? Her voice carries across the room, not loud, not aggressive, just proud. Half the table's here. Richard's face changes. Recognition, confusion, something I can't name. Patricia recovers first. Thea, she says, smile flicking on like a light switch, camera ready. What a surprise. We've been so worried about you. She reaches for my hand, I let her squeeze it, then pull back. I've been well, I say. Victoria, at the edge of the table, watches like a chess player seeing an unexpected move. We heard you were doing some decorating work, she says, small, patronizing. That's sweet. Her tone lands exactly as intended, dismissive. Margaret hears it. Calmly she turns to Victoria. Decorating? Alder Interiors manages a $6 million commercial portfolio. I'd hardly call that decorating. The table goes quiet. A man lowers his scotch. Two women stop talking. Victoria's smile freezes. A colleague of Victoria's, a real estate lawyer I don't know, leans over and says, Alder Interiors? She owns that. We just contracted them for our Stamford project. Victoria goes pale. I stand still, calm. I didn't come to prove anything, just to be present, and right now that's enough. 1 week later, Daniel calls me from his office in Charlotte, notes and legal pads between us. He explains what happened. The Westport property Margaret and I are buying sits next to the Anders estate. A boundary survey and title check are standard. Daniel contacts the attorney of record, Gerald Whitfield. Professional, routine until he hears the buyer. Alder Interiors LLC owner and principal Thea Anders. Silence. Not polite, not awkward, just weightless. Whitfield recognizes the name. The same Thea Anders from the inheritance file. Another pause. Daniel hears papers shuffle. He confirms financials, portfolio valuation. Alder Interiors $9.4 million. 15 seconds of complete quiet on the line. Then Whitfield says quietly, I'll need to contact my client. Just like that. A man recalibrating everything he thought he knew about a family he served for 20 years. That afternoon, Whitfield calls my father, Richard Anders, and I later learn the details through Daniel and documents that eventually make their way back to me. In the study at Ridgewood Lane, behind the mahogany door, Whitfield lays it out. A property transaction, a neighboring parcel, buyer Alder Interiors, owned and run by Thea Anders. Combined assets, $9.4 million. Richard sits silent. That's impossible, he says finally. Whitfield confirms the numbers again, noting no Anders family money is involved. Every penny is mine. Richard repeats it, softer now, almost a whisper. That's impossible. Patricia listens from her chair by the window, speakerphone on, taking in every word. Her face doesn't move, but her hand grips the linen napkin on the side table so tightly her knuckles are white. Victoria paces in the living room, phone pressed to her ear, her voice sharp and urgent. Do you know anything about Alder Interiors in North Carolina? Have you heard of it? Richard sets his phone down and stares at the wall, at the 3 silver-framed photos of Victoria, then at the empty space where my photograph should have been. He wants to call me, but Whitfield's reply is calm and firm. Through attorneys, Richard. She has counsel now. Everything must go through proper channels. Richard nods slowly, and in that nod, something fractures that won't be fixed. His own daughter has a lawyer because of him. That same week, emails surface that change everything. Daniel, completing due diligence for the Westport property, finds routine title checks and transaction histories. But buried in the correspondence is something shocking. A chain of emails Victoria sent 14 months earlier to a broker named Paul Erickson, marked confidential. She paints me as financially irresponsible, implies I was cut off from the family for serious trust issues, and warns firms to be cautious with anyone connected to my name. There are 3 more emails, each sent to different recipients, using the same careful, devastating phrasing, implied accusations without outright lies, leaving recipients to imagine the worst. In Connecticut, this is called tortious interference with business relations. Daniel sends me the chain. I sit at my desk in Asheville with mountain light spilling in, Read it once and do nothing for an hour. No yelling, no tears. Then I call Daniel. Are these enough? I ask. More than enough, he says. How long have you known? 2 days, he replies. I wanted to verify before telling you. I nod silently. Keep them safe. I won't act out of anger. I'll act if she doesn't stop. Pause here. Thea has the proof, the means, the legal power. But what would you do? Sue your own sister or walk away and let your work speak for itself? Comment A for sue, B for walk away. I've read every response and now it's time to see what happens next. 2 days later, Daniel gets the call. Whitfield, representing Richard Anders, formal, careful, measured. Daniel tells me my father wants a meeting, a family conversation with me. I sit with the decision for a full day, the way I've learned to face every hard choice over the past 3 years. Calmly, without reacting, without letting the old me take control. Finally, I tell Daniel, no. If my father has something to say, he can put it in writing. A few days later, the letter arrives through Whitfield's office on personal stationery, not legal letterhead, in Richard's own handwriting. Thea, I am incredibly proud of what you've accomplished. I had no idea. I would like to see you. We have a lot to discuss. Can we talk? I read it sitting at the kitchen table, at the window, then on the floor, remembering the night everything fell apart. Of course he's proud now. $9.4 million of success attached to my name. But where was this pride when I was taking $800 projects, eating cereal for dinner, and losing clients because his other daughter had poisoned my reputation across 3 states? I dictate my reply to Daniel. Thank you, Dad. But I don't need pride that arrives 3 years late. I built my life without it and I'll continue without it. A week later, a second letter comes, 2 words in shaky ink. I'm sorry. I read it, fold it, put it in a drawer and don't respond. I don't sue Victoria, not because I forgive her, but because turning my life into a courtroom exhibit would undo everything I've rebuilt. Instead, Daniel drafts a 5-page cease and desist letter. It details 4 instances of defamatory communication, attaches the email chain, cites Connecticut law on tortious interference with business relations, and ends with one clear warning. If Victoria continues to spread false or misleading information about me or Alder Interiors, legal action will begin without further notice. Daniel sends it certified mail to her Stamford office. By 10:14 a.m. that Thursday, he gets a read receipt. By 10:32 a.m., Victoria calls Patricia. Later, I learn from Daniel's quiet network in the Connecticut legal world that word spreads fast when a lawyer gets served at her own firm. Victoria's voice, I hear, is controlled and fast, the kind you use when calculating damage. What emails? Patricia asks. All of them, comes the reply. We'll handle it, Patricia says, but the tone doesn't land the same way anymore. There's a crack now. That evening, Victoria calls my phone directly for the first time in 3 years. I watch her name light up the screen and decline. Not fear, just finality. The emails travel as emails do. I don't leak them. I don't post them. I just let the truth work that I never share the emails with anyone outside Daniel and Margaret. But once the cease and desist reaches Victoria's firm, word spreads fast. A legal secretary logs it. A managing partner reviews it, just routine risk management. Within a week, 2 senior associates know she used professional channels to attack her own sister. Within 2 weeks, she's quietly reassigned from client-facing commercial work to internal compliance in a windowless office with no networking or lunches. In the Connecticut legal community, whispers start. Difficult family situation, judgment issues, not someone you want representing you. Her reputation doesn't collapse overnight, but it erodes slowly and permanently. I hear updates through Daniel, who hears them through his network. I don't celebrate. There's nothing triumphant in watching someone dismantle their own career with the choices they made. Then one afternoon, a number I haven't seen in 3 years appears on my phone. Uncle Robert. His voice is heavier than I remember. I owe you an apology. For what? For that day, the meeting. I should have said something. I should have stood up. I close my eyes. Thank you, Uncle Robert. That means more than you know. He asks to visit and I tell him Asheville is beautiful in spring. After we hang up, I sit for a long time thinking of the emails and the quiet ripple they've created. Ridgewood Lane is quieter now. Uncle Robert calls every other Sunday, keeping the conversation light. Weather, his dog, a story about grandmother Rosemary, but sometimes details slip. Richard has stopped his weekly golf game. He sits in his study for hours, bookshelves lined with law journals he'll never read. Somewhere on his desk, Robert once saw a printout of a magazine article featuring Alder Interiors. My photograph in the corner. He's read it so many times the paper is soft at the creases. Patricia maintains her public story. I was always the difficult one now that I have money. She tells it at brunch, book club, farmers markets. But Robert hears her at night through the bathroom door, crying, not the performative kind but the private kind from a place she won't admit exists in daylight. Then Richard sends a third handwritten letter longer than the second. I'm not asking you to come back. I know I don't have that right anymore. I just want you to know I was wrong. I see it now. I see you now. I know it's too late. I read it on my porch in Asheville as the mountains turn gold and the air smells of wood smoke and rain. I cry for the first time in 3 years, not from pain, but from the ache of receiving something I once needed desperately. Long after I learned I could live without it, I fold Richard's letter and place it in the drawer with the others. I don't respond. Later, over a quiet Tuesday dinner at Margaret's farmhouse outside Asheville, she brings it up like it's nothing. Roast chicken on the table, wine opened for no reason, fire low, her cat asleep on the armchair. I knew your father, she begins. I pause. Not now, she says. 30 years ago, when she was launching her first company, Richard Anders was a young lawyer in Fairfield County, sharp, ambitious, and one of her earliest legal advisors. She explains he measured everything in numbers, revenue, returns. If it couldn't be quantified, it didn't exist for him. She tells me he once said she lacked vision and that boutique real estate would never scale. She ended that retainer and a year later, her company had outperformed every expectation. Margaret looks at me steadily. When you first contacted me about the Hartford penthouse, I didn't know who you were. I hired you because your portfolio was remarkable. I found out you were Richard's daughter later when you told me about the family meeting. I decided I wasn't going to let history repeat itself. She turns her wine glass slowly. Not because I hate your father, I don't, but because I know what it's like to be dismissed by someone who can't see past their own measuring stick. I sit with that. Margaret didn't rescue me, she recognized me, the same determination she once saw in herself decades ago. Thank you, I say. Don't thank me. Just keep building, she replies. 6 months after the gala, the Westport property closes. I don't build a home for myself. Instead, I turn it into a shared creative space for young designers, artists and architects, people who need a door like I once did. I name it the Alder Collective. Margaret cuts the ribbon. That same week, Victoria sends her final email. I know I messed up. I know what I did was wrong. Can we talk, please? I take an hour to write 4 sentences. Victoria, I forgive you. I mean that. But forgiveness doesn't mean I want you back in my life. I wish you well. I press send and something in my chest loosens in a way I didn't know was still tight. 2 days later my phone rings. It's Patricia. I almost don't answer, but something tells me this call is necessary. Not for her but for me one last time. You proved your point, she says. Now come home. I stand at my apartment window, the Blue Ridge Mountains stretching endlessly in every direction. The pottery studio below plays soft music on the radio. Mom, I didn't prove a point, I say quietly. I built a life. This is my home now. She pauses. Thea, I love you, but I can't go back to being someone you only value when the numbers are right. There's a long silence. I hear her breathing. I wonder if she's crying, angry, or just sitting in the quiet of a house that's too big for 2 people who pushed away the wrong daughter. I hang up gently. Home isn't a house your parents own. It's the one you choose for yourself. That's the story I'm sharing. Not to make anyone hate my family, they're real people, flawed and stubborn, but to show what it feels like to find yourself anyway. My father believed success looked one way, my mother thought love meant control, and my sister feared my success would erase her identity. They were wrong, all of them. But they weren't strangers. They were my family, and that's why it hurt so much. Here's what I've learned. You don't need permission from those who gave up on you to start over. You just need one door. Sometimes you build it yourself. Sometimes someone like Margaret holds it open. Either way, the door is yours. Setting boundaries with family isn't abandonment. It's the choice to stop bleeding for people who won't hand you a bandage. Today, Alder Interiors has 14 employees and a portfolio worth over $10 million. Margaret is still my partner. Daniel is still my lawyer. Every morning I wake up in a home I bought myself in a city I chose, living a life built from a kitchen floor and a list of what I still had. Richard still writes letters. I still read them. I haven't replied. Maybe someday I will. Maybe I won't. That's my choice. And if you're out there sitting in the aftermath of being told you're not enough by the people who were supposed to believe in you, hear this. The best revenge isn't proving them wrong. It's building a life so full, so yours, that their opinion doesn't fit anywhere inside it. That's where I'll leave it. Thank you for listening. It means more than you know. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to walk away from family to save yourself, or are you still deciding? Share your story in the comments. I read every single one. And if you want more stories like this, there's another waiting in the description. I'll see you there.